Well, they quoted Shakespeare, and of course they quoted Oscar Wilde. They quoted philosophy, and they cited the Constitution when 5 judges of Supreme Court today said that you can't criminalize homosexuality, that sexuality was not an illness, but it was a state of being and in our biology. As they struck down the 2013 Kaushal judgment, which had criminalized homosexuality yet again in India, despite the High Court judgment striking it down, striking the dreaded Section 377 down in 2009, the judges, and here's the roll call of the people who made this happen: Chief Justice of India, Dipak Misra, Justice A.M. Khanvilkar, Justice Indu Malhotra, who is the new woman judge and the latest to join Supreme Court, Justice Nariman, and Justice Chandrachud. Now, what's made an issue is not just an issue of the LGBTQI community, but for all of us. It's about freedom of speech. It's about human rights, about the rights of minorities. And that's why their 500-odd page judgment was full of beautiful assertions about these rights, argued with precedences from all across the world. And that's why when it was announced in Supreme Court today, it made India cry. From Bangalore to Kolkata to Delhi and Lucknow, these pictures that you see on your screen there, people broke down in celebration. They cried from exhaustion of their journey and a kind of closure, especially when Justice Indu Malhotra said, history owes an apology to the LGBT community and their families for the delay in providing redressal for the ignominy, ostracism they have suffered. Over the course of the next couple of hours, we'll take you through the intricacies of that judgment, all that you need to know about it. But what I'm very excited to bring you here in NDTV studios is the winning team. Let me just introduce them right now. We have Menaka Guruswamy, we have Arundhati Karju, and the audience joined me actually. And first of all, before anything else, just applauding you. We also have Chef Ritu Dalmia, who joins us from London over Skype. And I think we should give them a round of applause, don't you think? Yeah, I really think so. This is the winning team. In studio with me, the winning team that made it happen, which after that Kaushal judgment in 2013, which got everyone's spirits down because it undid a lot of the good work that we'd seen till now. This is the team that came in and, well, set it right today, and that's why we've seen history being made. Now, I think we just want to say there's so many questions to ask you, Menaka Guruswamy, Arundhati Karju, and Ritu Dalmia, but I think, you know, I just want to start with some of the people's stories first before we get into the technicalities of it, because in a way it's also about the beauty of law and justice, but it's also about people. And when you read through that 500-odd page judgment, you understand the kind of struggles that people went through. And Ritu Dalmia, I want to start with you on that. You know, I was reading the part where it talked about the petitioners, and you're one of the petitioners over there. It talked about the fact that one of the petitioners, it doesn't name them, it says that one of the petitioners is a woman who had to drop out of a hostel.
I can't hear you, darling.
Okay.
Anyway, the heroes are all sitting there.
Well, you're one of the heroes as well.
All sitting there.
Yeah,
she's really
Menaka,
a big hero.
Arundhati, so you don't need to hear my voice, which anyway I can't hear. Menaka.
She's a hero. And we love the glasses. We love the glasses.
Without the glasses, no.
We love the glasses.
I can't hear you guys.
No, you can't. Well, I'm really hoping you hear us. I want to know, how are you following the judgment in London?
Can't hear you.
Okay, we're going to...
Okay, don't ask me. I will just answer. I'll pretend that I'm hearing the question. All I can say is I'm super excited. It's fabulous. I've got the stupid smile stuck on my face since morning. Everyone around me is wondering what's wrong with me. And thank you to Menaka. Thank you to Arundhati. It has been... what an emotional, what a brilliant journey. It's just absolutely fantastic. So, I didn't hear you, but I said what I had to say.
No, Ritu Dalmia, we are not done with you yet. I'm going to ask our technical team to fix your audio and then come back to you because, you know, we have questions. So, we're going to fix that audio. But, you know, before we go back to Ritu Dalmia and go to Menaka Guruswamy and Arundhati Karju, you know, as I was telling you, as the show started, a lot of the people, young people in our audience today, they all said that they started crying. I know that I felt really teary as well. Everybody's had this emotional kind of journey because of this. But there are lots of people who have personal stories as well. Ali, do you want to share your story? Yeah.
Yeah, the story that I want to talk about is quite personal to me. I'm in a relationship, it's like the third year now. So what I want to say now is, before my partner met me, he had hooked up with this guy for a casual sex date through one of the popular apps, and it happened right here in Delhi itself, in CP rather. And the guy took him on his bike to some dark corner. There was some other people who joined with him, and my partner was practically gang raped. Okay, and it took him months to actually recover from the trauma, because you know he could not go to the police because of the fear that if he went to the police and they would turn the tables on him. They would call him by all those those filthy words that they use for the gay community. And I'm pretty sure had 377 not been there, I mean, probably he could have had the justice that was denied to him.
And you really feel, thank you first of all for sharing that really personal story, but you really think that today, that if 377 was struck down, when did this happen?
It happened about, it's been about four or 5 years.
So if 2009 would have stood, you think that, well, I mean, stories like this, Menika Guruswamy.
Yeah. That time is over. Today, I think the Supreme Court showed that it was the people's court. It told us that the Constitution is her people. LGBT, non-LGBT, men, women, transgendered people, this is everyone's country. I am terribly sorry for what happened to your partner. This judgment has come a little too late on that count, but it is here. And I think the Supreme Court with this judgment is saying to you, your partner, to young LGBT people all over this country, Sunitra, who are watching your show, across the villages of India, the towns of India, her mountains and her plains, the Supreme Court is saying, this is your court, this is your constitution, and this is your country.
I think that just means so much. You know, there's one of the reasons that I wanted to ask you was, and this is one of those technical questions, but I think it's important for us to understand. The 500 odd pages, they had all the judges writing. Some of the things were a reiteration. It felt though, I didn't feel there was a repetition. It was a reiteration that our rights matter. Absolutely. There was a reiteration of what it meant even if you were a minority. But can you explain the technicality of it? Maybe Arundhati, you would like to, of why the need for each judge to stand up there and give their version of it?
No, I think it's wonderful that they've done that. Firstly, Ali, thank you for sharing that story, and I am so sorry that you, but also so many other young Indians have had to face these situations. And I think really the court, by speaking through all these 4 judgments, is really saying never again. The 2 points that really come out through this judgment are, one, they talk about India's transformative constitution. So we know we're a young country, right? This is the future. And they really talk about how this constitution is meant to transform us from a feudal society to a modern society. And judgments like this, and the fact that 4 out of, the 5 judges have spoken through these 4 judgments, help to do that.
Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, it was wonderful to have that brief interaction with Ritu Dalmia, but I wanted to ask you, is it that what changed in 2013? The fact that you had, before that, right, we knew the fight was happening. We knew that since the NAS Foundation had taken it up, since early, 2001, we knew it was going on. But is it that in 2013, when prominent people came up and they said, this is my fight as well, when they lent their faces, their names, did that make the difference?
Well, I think it was extremely important that LGBT Indians come to court by triggering this writ petition jurisdiction, by saying that, you know, their constitutional rights were violated, not as a public interest petition, not as a groups and organizations, but actual LGBT Indians who are saying, here I am. Here I am, this is my constitution, this is my country, and this is how my life is dismembered by this law, which, by the way, is a colonizer's law.
Yes.
So
I was just reading that it comes from the 16th century Britain.
Yeah, it's Victorian
called
morality.
Buggery Act.
This is not our constitutional, this is not our cultural norm, this is Victorian morality. So I think that it was extremely important. And so the petition that, you know, Arundhati drafted, which is the main writ petition in Navtej Singh Johar, really was LGBT Indians coming to court saying, these are our lives. And there is story after story. There's Ritu's stories, Navtej's stories, Sunil's stories, Aisha's story, Aman's stories, talking about how this law has affected their life deeply.
So who is the person? Tell us about some of these individual stories. I was hoping that, you know, Ritu Dalmia would share her story. We also hope to be joined by Keshav Suri, the hotelier, who is one of the petitioners, who shared his own story, and I think he should be joining us as well. But the one about the young woman who was in the girls' hostel and then had to drop out of it, tell us about that. I mean, the fact that, you know, it can be so. I think part of the misconception that people kept using over and over for years was that they said that this is a law which people don't use. It's against men, and, you know, it's about protection of people against rape, and yet we see how, like the IAS story, the story in the judgment about someone who qualified for the IAS but didn't take it. I mean, these are stories of
Sunil Mehra.
That's Sunil Mehra.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's Sunil Mehra.
Who is a journalist for our viewers, and he is one of the petitioners. Tell us a little bit about his story.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how life could have been different. You know, it makes you wonder how this country would be different if this law had gone many years ago. You know, what I think changed in 2013 was also that the Kaushal judgment was so hurtful. I mean, to be called a minuscule minority with so-called rights, it's something which, it's very hard not to take it personally. And I think it really shows that the Supreme Court is not just an abstract institution. It's a real institution which really influences the lives of people, and this law had a real influence on people's lives.
Okay, you bring up the minorities one, and that's why I want to bring up that graphics about quoting that minorities part, because I want to talk about that. It is an important one. First of all, it's interesting, the court says very clearly that 7% of our population is LGBTQI. So that's one kind of figure that we have, which I didn't know before, because our census, which marks other kind of population, doesn't really mark that. So it's interesting that this judgment gives us a figure that 7% of our population is the gay population. Now, what it says about minorities is interesting, because the Supreme Court basically says it doesn't matter how many you are, everyone's right has to be upheld, each individual's right. And while saying that, it says that in the case at hand, whatever be the percentage of gays, lesbians, bisexuals and transgenders, this court is not concerned with the number of persons belonging to the LGBT community. What matters is whether this community is entitled to certain fundamental rights which they claim, and whether such fundamental rights are being violated due to the presence of a law in the statute book. Doesn't this sound like it could apply to any case, not just gay rights, but anything? And that, Menaka Goswami, is at this moment when we're seeing lynchings, when we're seeing attacks on minorities, it speaks to all of us.
Right, absolutely. Look, I think that what is profoundly, I would say, remarkable and beautiful about this judgment, and there's so many things wonderful about it, right? But it is exactly this, that the court actually locates this in the idea of India as a constitutional democracy. That this is a country of many minorities and many majorities, and that is a shifting conception, and that it is only constitutional morality that is relevant in this context. It is not majoritarian morality, it is not, you know, societal morality, it is the Constitution's value scheme. And that all the justices locate it in that understanding and then find for equal rights, equal protections, expression, dignity, life, liberty. I think that is what is remarkable about it. This judgment speaks to a social, political, legal fabric that is India today. That is why it is important.
And you were, of course, the lawyer for the IITians.
Yes.
And we are now joined, I can tell our viewers, we are now joined by two IITians. Introduce them for us, Menaka.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they are just a remarkable set of men and women. They belong to a 350-person IITian society called Pravriti, which comprises LGBT students and alumni. And they're just extraordinary. They're articulate, they're talented, they would dress colorfully in court, they would wear colorful kurtas, and they were always optimistic. They filled the courtroom with optimism and hope and gave us all courage.
And you know, I think, you know, this goes back to the thing of the fact that we had faces for the first time.
Yes.
And IITians are India's pride, right?
Yes, they're our pride.
You know, you guys are the stars.
Yes.
So tell us about your personal stories, if you would. You know, what was life like on campus, being LGBTQI, and the need then to fix things?
Well, first of all, I begin with, I'm really excited.
So are we all.
Yeah. So it's a day where, you know, it's like so many memories haunt you as well. The past memories of, you know, how we have faced different kinds of discriminations at different points of your time, but also at the same time, the Pandora's box has got open. So it's just so many issues are coming around, and there's so much hope around the community in this country. So, well, IIT, I'm going to say, like, if you ask me, particularly about the experience from Delhi IIT, I don't say the campus is in that sense very queer friendly. Because there's this group which was known to be as Indradhanush, which was functional for us for a long, not for a long time, but for some time. I think in the previous post-Delhi High Court's verdict, that particular sort of Indradhanush organization, they had a platform to still negotiate with the administration in order to organize different kind of queer programs in the campus. But after the Supreme Court's verdict of overturning the Section 377, actually didn't, so they don't have any proper sort of legal platform to really negotiate with the administration. That's why I think this verdict is so important. So, and we are actually today itself, like the couple of friends I've been talking to, we are now thinking of how to revive the, the Indradhanush as a group in the campus itself. So, so it's I say it's both yes and no. There are population who who constantly support us. Even the department from I belong to, I think the faculties have in the morning they just came and asked what's the scene, what's the verdict.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a plus point for me, I think. But of course there are also people who are not really comfortable with it. So it's a mixed population. But I think it's a great achievement. I don't know words to express actually.
Did you have the same experience as well of support within the IIT community? Because, the stories, we've not heard the LGBTQI struggle, the gay struggle in IIT campuses. The stories that have emerged before your petition were ones of the pressure of performing well in exams, of, the tension of doing well. But the fact that there are other struggles on, and you gave a voice to it.
In my experience, IIT Guwahati has not been very progressive, but it is also not less progressive. In the sense, we had very open discussions in our, say, classrooms or any common discussion ground. We would openly discuss about sexuality, gender, whatnot. And so I could sense the free thinking vibe there, but it did not have, when I was there like 3 years back, it did not have any proper setup so that the voices do not go unheard. Because, LGBTQ population in IITs go through, severe trauma sometimes, I would say. There is, social acceptance, and some people cannot cope up with the studies, and everything together, it makes some people's life hell, frankly speaking.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and so once you have the support ready, then things go really well.
So did you have societies which like you have debating society? Did you have a gay society? Or
we did not have that back then. But
Now
it,
you
it
do.
has it has now.
Now you do. Oh,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That really, really is good news, that way to have support. I want to, there are lots of people in the audience as well who want to share stories, who have questions for all of you as panelists as well. So you wanted to talk about your story? Yeah.
Well, good evening to all the panelists.
Hi.
It was the year 2004. From then onwards, I had a story to narrate about my own self. It was a small guy, a young child, was molested by a taxi driver and two of his colleagues. Thereafter, he was thrown away. The child went to his dad. He complained. The child was hospitalized for 22 months, but the dad did not had that much courage to go to the police and complain regarding it. Later in 2009, when the Delhi High Court, in 2013, when the Delhi High Court's verdict came out, that child, that was me, I had that much of courage to question my dad, why you did not do that at that moment. And amidst both the years, I'm talking 2004 and 2013, I was molested by a close relative, a neighbor, my dad's friend, and just don't know who all they were. I did not have the courage to speak about it. I could not go to my dad or to my grandparents or to my friends or to any guardian just to say, man, I was molested. Not only physically but also mentally. That took over me, that threw me into a dig of depressions. And in 2013, when I asked my dad that why did you not complain, he said, now you're legal, now we can complain. The only question was, I don't care about legal or illegal. Was I not your son? Why couldn't you? First, he was ashamed of such social, allegation which could have been slapped on my family's face. Second, he was like, you're a guy, you cannot be crying. You cannot be cribbing about such incidents. And today, it was not just a Supreme Court's verdict. They were not just, a sentence for me. It was, my dad called me up. He rang me up and he said, I don't live with my dad, though we are in the same city. My dad rang me up and he said, you must be watching news. I said, yes, I am. And he said, congratulations, beta. You're legal now. That made me happy. That made me sad. That made me confused that shall I be happy that I am legal or shall I be happy that my dad considers that I'm legal? So
But you still resent him for not raising his voice and standing
yes, I
up for
do.
you?
And honestly speaking, all my friends, I'm a fashion designer. So before becoming one, I'm a businessman and I run my own studio. Before becoming a fashion designer, I asked my dad, I was a science student in 11th and 12th. My dad wanted me to be an engineer, and I said that I don't want to be an engineer since I have much to do in arts and all. He thought that, not only he, but my grandparents and my relatives, they thought that being a fashion designer has an association with LGBT. If you're a fashion designer, you're automatically gay or you're a lesbian, whether or not. So that really disheartened me at that point of time. And you know what, honestly speaking, in my bachelor's course, I had no support of my family except my grandmom's, because she herself is a fashion designer and she not in India, but she practiced her fashion designing abroad. So she had that sort of a mindset, and she was broad in spectrums that okay, fine, a fashion designer does not mean you being a gay. My dad, my relatives,
Thank God for cool grandmothers then.
Yeah, everybody said that you should not go for fashion designing, instead go for engineering, because if you're going to go for fashion designing, either you're going to get molested or casting couches, or you're going to get gay. And
you're going to become gay.
Yeah, I'm going to become a gay. And I have a stepmother. I would just like to add this point. I have a stepmother and I have a foster brother, like a step brother. She literally kicked me out of the house.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I'm not living with my parents, with my dad actually.
Yes.
She literally kicked me out of the house just because she was afraid that I could molest my
Oh my God.
younger bro.
I
I took care of him even when I was giving board exams, 10th board exams, 12th board exams. I used to.
No, I just
wake
want
up
to
all
thank
night.
you for your courage in sharing this story, because by sharing this story, I think, yeah, seriously, so many people feel connected by what you're saying. I can just say that the two petitioners in this case, they're joining us as well. Ritu Dalmia hopefully can hear me now, and Keshav Suri, the other petitioner who's a hotelier, they're both there with us. Ritu Dalmia, what I was asking you before is that the stories that we heard in the judgment that came out of horrendous personal stories of the petitioners, of saying, you know, the woman that's mentioned in the judgment who had to leave her hostel. And, you know, one would assume, because all the petitioners, a lot of the petitioners like yourself, you know, you're high profile, you look like you have a wonderful life, but these stories were a real surprise to all of us.
Look, I'll be very honest with you. If I come and tell you how sad my life has been or what I suffered, it won't be true, because I was one of the few lucky people. I had a lot of support from my family, from my friends. When I came out to my mother, I mean, 2 days later, she sent a box of mangoes to my mom, to my partner. So I was very lucky that way. For me, why I signed up for this petition was very simple. Because someone told me that all you do is complain and moan and bitch about how things are in this country. And I had the, how shall I say, I would say the fortune of meeting some people who were really badly treated. And I was one of the few lucky people who wasn't in that place. So for me, this petition was mainly because maybe I could do something. Not because I had personally suffered, but I had met people who had suffered. So it's not about horror stories. Thankfully, the country may have its limitations, but also it is a country where there are a lot of people with open mind, big hearts and acceptance. And we should look at that positivity as well, because I know of many people who have had the support, not only from family, but friends, or from the community, but also from straight people. So I was, as I said, one of the few very lucky ones who got through it, who sailed through it without feeling belittled or feeling that I was lesser than anyone else.
Straight or gay, Ritu Dalmia, we're all united by love today. I can tell you here in the studio as well. It's a great feeling to be talking to all of you. Keshav Suri, do you feel the same like Ritu Dalmia, that you know that you come from? You've talked about the privilege that you come from. Or was it actually some childhood memory or some personal incident which spurred you on to become this petitioner?
You know, I, again, like Ritu, can't really say that I am, because I'm going to sound like a poor little rich boy. But and I don't want to come across as that. I did face, of course, discrimination. I was in an all-boys Catholic school where I tasted drag at a very young age, where I played Mother Mary and all the various characters, and I chose to be taking those roles on as I grew up. I did face, of course, discrimination, but I'm still here today. I'm here in front of you. I'm being able to have this conversation, whereas so many are not. So many in my own team that are working for me at the Lalit, people like Sonia, who's a transgender acid attack survivor, people like Mahi, Kiara, who's basically both of them faced honor killings because they decided to be trans. I think their stories are probably worth way more weight than my story. And I think, I mean, I'm just in awe right now of people like Menika and Arun, that you were just sitting there, because honestly, it's because of them that I'm actually being able to have this conversation. It's because of them that I can actually say I'm no longer a fringe person today. I'm a proud Indian. I'm not living in the shadows. And my team of over 10 transgender employees and my 3,500 team can say that we've really ushered into a new era thanks to the two power-packed ladies sitting there.
Keshasuri, I heard, I don't know if this is Google information or real information, that you married your partner in Paris in June. Now, you know, we're all greedy about rights, okay? So we've got, you know, they've struck down 377, but we're now thinking the right to, you know, to have marriages, to gay marriages. Is that what you're hoping for as well?
Well, I mean, I asked this question to the two ladies there.
Yes.
Because they're the ones who are going to get my marriage legal here. Of course, I'm hopeful for that. I mean, it's unfair that my partner is French and it's legal. I have rights in his country and he doesn't have the rights fully yet in our country. But today is such a victorious day. I'd like to just focus on the fact that at least, you know, let's celebrate for 2 minutes before we start the next flight.
Yes.
And if I do, then those two ladies are the ones who are going to take me to that next flight.
Yeah, Menaka Guruswamy, one of the things I wanted to ask you, it pertains to the story he shared as well, is that there was some confusion about 377, that it is partly struck down, that there are certain aspects of it that are still there. Would you explain that to our viewers?
I think, you know, there are two portions to it. The Supreme Court is very clear that Section 377 will not apply to consensual sexual acts between consenting adults, right? And Justice Malhotra makes that very clear, that this is an adult is a person 18 and above, right? So the section does not apply to consensual same-sex or even opposite-sex relations, right? What does survive is that it applies, rightly so, to non-consensual activity, and it applies to actions of bestiality. So that is what remains, and I don't think, you know, anyone has a problem with that.
Okay, we're going to take a short break now. Our team of anti-377 heroes are here in studio. We have the petitioners as well. We're going to continue talking to them, take lots of questions, because it is a huge historic judgment, but we need to understand it well as well. So stay right here on NDTV. We'll be back in just a bit. On NDTV, we have the team that has got us this historic judgment for gay rights against Section 377, and we have a live audience in studio, and all the petitioners from Ritu Dalmia, Keshav Suri, the IIT students, and the winning team of lawyers, Arundhati Karju and Menaka Guruswamy here. But first, I just want to point out the tweet that, you know, one of the things has been that there has been quite a bit of silence from political parties. They haven't really responded to it. Only RSS responded, but now we are seeing Congress party putting out this tweet as well. Let's just see this video that they've tweeted out.
The Congress party has been supporting the fight to decriminalize homosexuality for close to a decade now. We believe that love is love and all love is equal.
I feel my personal view is that these are matters of personal freedom. I think these type of matters should be left to individuals, and these are their choices. This country is known for its freedom.
The then Congress President Sonia Gandhi had expressed her support for the LGBTQIA+ community.
I believe that no human being, not just in India but anywhere in the world, should be discriminated against because of religion, because of caste, because of color, because of so many issues. Whether they're differently abled, but least of all because of their sexual preferences.
In its 2014 manifesto, the Congress party had even vouched to be an ally of the community and decriminalize homosexuality.
Today I attempted to introduce 3 bills in the Lok Sabha. The third one, which would have amended Section 377 to legalize and decriminalize all forms of consensual sex between consenting adults, irrespective of gender, that was not allowed to be introduced at all.
After years of strife and struggle and some setbacks, the Supreme Court has finally decriminalized homosexuality today.
प्यार तो प्यार होता है, चाहे लड़का लड़की करे, चाहे लड़का लड़का करे, चाहे लड़की लड़की करे, वो प्यार प्यार होता है.
Okay, so the Congress party has tweeted. However, there's a slight difference. We don't see a lot of politicians, even of the Congress party, come up and respond to the judgment that much. We're not seeing that. Let's just also pull up for you what the RSS has said. The RSS was one of the first organizations to come up with a statement on this particular, on the judgment. The RSS has said, and if you can have the graphics up there, like top court, we too don't think homosexuality a crime, but such relationships against the order of nature. So they've used order of nature, which there are lots of references to in the judgment. We do not support gay relationships. Indian society does not recognize gay relationships. That's what the RSS is saying. I want the young students of IIT to respond to the two political parties, the RSS, the Congress, and the lack of loud voices from the political community at large.
Yeah, I think even since from the beginning of the proceedings itself, I would say there's this, you know, even the government who is in center, he just said, you know, they're going to leave it in the court's wisdom. So I think this is a kind of empathy. I would say this is a kind of apathy. Sorry, this is a kind of apathy from their part, because you know, this is a high time that they should take a stand. You know, you can't just be so silent about everything, because these are some, you know, these are some human rights issues, and you have been voted by the same human beings who have been, you know, who voted for you. So it's something that you have to answer to the population who have voted for you. So I think this is a kind of constant apathy from their part. But yeah, Congress has I think has shown support in bits and pieces at different points of time. So I think Shashi Tharoor to Rahul Gandhi's tweeting about it.
Well, we've also had Arun Jaitley say openly that he was for decriminalization. But I think what's interesting is that the RSS talks about decriminalization, but not supporting, you know, gay rights as such, about accepting gay relationships. So there's a difference over there. I just wanted both of you to just comment as lawyers. Are you, you know, what do you think of the stance taken by the government, whether it's the UPA or the NDA? They've both had a hands-off kind of, let the courts do it, and we don't want to be too identified with it.
Well, do you want to take this first?
No, go ahead.
Look, I think that, you know, as representatives of the people, right, our political class needs to just do better, right? They just need to do better, not just on this count, but on really every singular issue that impacts people's lives and speaks to discrimination. So I believe this. I believe that today there are two kinds of Indians really, and it's not LGBT and non-LGBT. It is Indians who believe in the Constitution and its values, and those who don't. I think that is the great divide in this country. And I think that the idea of India is located in its Constitution. You don't have an option if you're an Indian citizen. And I think that every organization, be they large cadre-based ones or not, have to appreciate the idea of India in the Constitution. The top court has not just said decriminalization. The top court is very categorical across all four judgments that LGBT Indians are protected by grounds of equality, non-discrimination, expression, dignity, life, liberty, fraternity. Yes. Very categorical, very, very categorical. This is their constitution as well. So, you know, halfway giveaways, that time has gone.
Ritu Dalmia, do you have a view on this? Why is it, okay, we don't have a right now. I think, don't you think, I wanted to just get in a view from the, you know, the young audience on this particular thing. Why is it that we are not hearing so many politicians just come up there and speak about it? They love to speak otherwise, but why not now? Yeah.
Good evening to everyone present here today. I feel that criminalization of Section 377 is a huge step forward for our society. However, a lot of work still needs to be done to deconstruct the negative notions that are connected with the LGBTQ community. And the fact that the ruling party, the BJP, has not made any positive remarks regarding the event, the huge event that has happened today, and the fact that RSS had made such a comment, which you just showed on the screen, just goes to show the amount of work that still needs to be done. And I personally feel that the fact that a lot of politicians have still not made a comment regarding this global event that has happened today is also related to the votes, because a huge amount of a huge population of our society still does not believe that it is moral to be who you are, the way you are, and that you can't actually change it, and you shouldn't want to even change it.
Yeah. Keshasuri, do you believe that? The fact that they go where the votes are, and as soon as more of us, the majority of Indians start speaking up for gay rights, that they'll also make their voice heard then?
Yeah, of course. I mean, see, point is that if the ruling party did say that they leave it in the hands of the capable court, correct? And when they did say that, look at today. Today, that capable court has given the best judgment it possibly could have. So I'm saying that, well, thank you for not saying anything. At least thank you for leaving and putting it in the hands of the capable court. I think that, we spend a lot of time in asking and saying what, they can do, what we can do. I think that we need to really, that's why we've got Menika and Arundhati there. And I think that's how, if we want to make this change, it's going to be through the courts. And I think that today's are an example of that.
Yeah. Okay, and I just want to for one second just go back to the story that he gave. And Arundhati, you were saying that how this entire case about protection of men who may get raped, how that is covered by law.
Yeah, so I think one of the big gaps in our law is that we don't have protections for sexual violence against men, where men are victims of sexual violence.
We don't have that.
We don't have that, right? Because the rape law, under the rape law, women are victims of sexual violence. So despite the 2013 amendments to the criminal law, we only have rape law provisions where women are victims and men are perpetrators. Right. Now, what the court has done today in today's judgment is saved 377 as far as sexual violence against men is concerned, and perhaps we need that today because there are so many instances of sexual violence against men for which otherwise you have no recourse in law. But the question is 377 the right way to do that? Do we want to use a law that reflects colonial morality?
Which they still are going to.
Which is the only provision that you have today for sexual violence against men. So I think the next step for our legislators, and since we're looking at what our parliamentarians should be doing, is really passing a law that protects men from sexual violence and that reflects our current understanding of sexual violence.
And would that
then we can get rid of 377 altogether.
Yeah. Okay, so would that be by making the rape law, which applies to women right now, gender neutral?
Well, I think debate is needed on that, whether you want to have the same law, whether you want to have two different sets of provisions. Yeah. I think, in my personal opinion, a law that sees men as perpetrators of violence and where victims are gender neutral is definitely the next step forward. But there's some debate which is necessary as to how you work out the mechanics of that.
Okay, let's take in some questions right now. Yeah, you had a question?
नमस्कार सभी को. मेरा क्वेश्चन है मैम कि जैसे आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जजमेंट आया इसके ऊपर, वो तो वाकई में बधाई के लिए पात्र हैं, लेकिन मैम जिस तरीके से हमारा समाज है, जिस तरीके का हमारा देश है, पॉलिटिकल आइडियाज़ डिफरेंट हैं. जैसे 1961 में डावरी कानून बनाया गया था कि ये गैर वैधानिक हो जाएगा अगर कोई लेगा या देगा, लेकिन वो आज भी चल रहा है. तो मैम क्या वास्तव में इतने बड़े देश में 29 राज्य, 7 केंद्र शासित प्रदेश और बिना इच्छा के पॉलिटिकल पार्टियां क्या वास्तव में इस कानून को लागू कर पाएंगी क्या देश में, और लोगों का क्या विचार होना चाहिए इसके ऊपर?
For our viewers in the south, I'm just going to quickly translate. He's asking whether, despite today's judgment, will the discrimination against the community, the LGBT community, will that still continue? How would you answer?
Look, I think this is a wonderful foundation for a fuller citizenship, to address stigma, and I think the judges recognize that. Right. Justice Narima is very categorical. He says that the government needs to sensitize its officers, needs to sensitize the police. तो बदलाव ज़रूर आएगी. I think this is a very, I'm not even going to call it a first step because it's much more than that. It's a firm foundation.
Okay, your question?
Good evening, everyone. I would like to respond to his question actually.
You would?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, our government needs, you know, they only work for votes. So as more people would come out, they would use it as a vote bank.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I respond as well?
Sure.
You know, हमारा समाज जो है हम सभी से बना हुआ है. You know, there's a lovely book that I recently finished reading by Anuradha Beniwal called Azadi Mera Brand, and she asked this question about basically why do women face so much sexual violence in India. And she says when Indian society is just us, right? It's you, it's me, it's the judges, it's these petitioners. So when our thinking changes, then society also changes. And I think the fact that they have come forward today, that we have all these people who have come forward, you know, Navtej and Sunil are in their late 50s and 60s, and the IIT petitioners are maybe in the same age group as all of you, and they have all come forward to say that the law would change or should change. So society is made up of all of us. I mean, this is a question that's been put to me so many times today, as though the court's thinking on this issue is really removed from society. But you meet so many people who say that actually our families were supportive, our friends were supportive, our teachers were supportive. And on the other hand, of course, there are people who have had terrible experiences and rejection from different institutions. But I think at the end of the day, society is all of us.
Yeah. You know, just before we end this segment and our, you know, the legal team has to go, I just wanted to take up one aspect about the apology that Indu Malhotra talked about. If we can have the graphics of that up, where she says, history owes an apology to the members of this community and their families for the delay in providing redressal for the 49 ignominy and ostracism that they have suffered through the centuries. And she makes this, and you know, I was speaking to people earlier, throughout the day we've been taking reactions, and so many people just said that it made things better, that this apology was really important.
Sure. I think that Justice Malhotra really captured, I think, the essence of really a core constitutional value, which is to make reparations and to heal. And if you want to heal, the first step is to acknowledge that something has gone wrong, to apologize for it. I think it was a very sensitive, very big moment today, because it showed something, something very interesting about our top court, that it is a deeply introspective institution, and that it accepts when it makes mistakes and it changes course. That is a very big plus for Indian democracy.
Did anyone of you want to add to this, the apology, what it meant to you, Roman?
So I was in the courtroom and it was very emotional. I mean,
how many people were there, by the way?
Oh my God, it was full up to the brim.
Everyone came and said, I was in the courtroom, yeah.
The lines outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't know. I mean, like maybe 150 people in total or something like that.
So the apology?
Yeah. So, I mean, there were many moments today when I felt like crying, and I cried sometimes as well. Tears just rolled down. I did not even realize that. It meant that much to me. From what our CJI said at the beginning of his speech to this apology, I mean, I cried. I mean, I cannot explain that because I don't think those emotions are repetitive. So it meant something really big, and it was not even something that I was expecting for. So that's what made it special.
I know.
I think that's a good teaching for the political parties actually. So they also need to apologize. You know, like the kind of apathy that's been. I think it's not about. I think it's coming in a context. It's like where every form of minorities are in attack in this country. So it means a lot, and I think the government now really needs to show some kind of, you know, even not empathy, but some kind of sympathy at least, and they should be little sensitive what they were saying, what comments they are making, and they should also learn from this entire statement that they also owe an apology to the entire community of this country.
I think that's so well said. And last comment there before, go ahead.
Hi, this is Arpit Bhala, and I am like working for the community since 5 years now. So I hail from Haryana, where the society is much conservative. We can't expect inclusiveness at least. when I moved back to Delhi, like 3 years back, I was doing my graduation. I started here, like, I thought that it should be inclusive. It might be, but it was much conservative, as always. So we, like, after even this GAC committee thing and ICC committee thing, which was passed by UGC, only 3 colleges from the 64 colleges of Delhi University had a gender forum kind of thing. After
a
this
panel
whole,
to deal with.
Yeah. And like, so the main part is like when we were actually doing it, so I thought up to start up a gender cell in Hansraj, and it took like almost 2 years of struggle to do that, because nobody was ready to even talk about the LGBT issues, talk about the gender issues, because everyone was like, gender issues, oh, it's a part of WDC thing, like women development cell thing.
Yeah.
Nobody, nothing else comes into picture. And we were actually like made a society out of like WDC ka part bana diya gaya, like gender.
Do you think it will be
cell
different today? Do you think they'll be more responsive today?
Yeah. So the best part was the principal Rama Sharma actually.
He's really naming today.
I should.
You've just
She
talked
was
about
there
your
to support
principal who
us
won't allow you.
as like a committee for LGBTQ people in Hansraj, such a conservative college. And now, when there was this like judgment passed, they were celebrating, like the only college in the university which celebrated it on campus. But now there are still much more things, like only if like it's only Hansraj. What about other campuses and other colleges in each and every part of the country, like where every day a rape happens?
You know, I'm sorry to cut you short, but you know, I think we have to wrap now. But I guess what his story tells us as well, that it's such a long road, that we're making progress. So you're hopeful that all of these students can now hold up this judgment, right?
Yeah, it's day 1 of New India. Day 1. Yeah, or and I think बहुत बदलाव आने वाला है.
Okay.
I'm very confident of that.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks to them.
Thank you all.
Thanks to them.
Thanks for coming to NDTV and talking about this. Thanks very much. We're going to take a short break, but the coverage of this continues. I'm hoping some of our guests stay back, the audience stays back, and we talk about this much more. But thank you to Menika Guruswamy and Dipak. We'll take a short break and be right back. Welcome to the special on NDTV about the historic judgment that has come from Supreme Court, where Supreme Court's 5-judge bench has ruled that homosexuality is no longer criminal. They cited precedences from across the world. They cited the Constitution to say that Section 377 violates fundamental rights while decriminalizing consensual sex between adults. Those pictures that you see on your screen there are celebration shots that are coming in from across the country. Let's just take a closer look at what exactly happened in court.
We are no more criminals, and we are proud to be as what we are.
कि अब शायद हम कुछ बेहतरी की ओर अब हम जा सकते हैं.
We are no more criminalized. This is very, very, very important.
History owes the LGBT community and their families an apology, said Justice Indu Malhotra. India has finally moved into the 21st century as the Supreme Court today legalized consensual sex between adults of the same sex.
This is not like a bed of roses. We have a long way to go because, you know, we are still... Woo!
Star Bollywood director Karan Johar summed it up. The country gets its oxygen back. Menika Guruswamy, one of the leading lawyers who's become a star figure for many, said this is a message and a step forward for wiping the stigma faced by the community.
I think we are very, very happy, very satisfied with the court's 4 judgments by the court. all the judgments reaffirm the Constitution's entire range of the Constitution's protections for LGBT Indians, equality, non-discrimination, life, liberty, expression and dignity.
Justice Chandrachud said that 158 years ago, Section 377 deprived people of love and pointed out, after independence, India continued with this. All that ended at 11:30 a.m. this morning.
The Supreme Court rewrote the law, saying consensual carnal intercourse amongst adults, be it homosexual or heterosexual, in private spaces does not in any way harm the public decency or morality. LGBTs have equal constitutional rights like others. An individual's sexual orientation is natural. Homosexuality is not a mental disorder. Treat the LGBT without stigma. The state has no business to intrude into the privacy of individuals. And more than decriminalization, it's about rights enabling them to be equal citizens. The court held that Section 377, which criminalized consensual sex between adults, violated India's fundamental rights to equality, prohibition of discrimination, freedom of speech and liberty.
What happens to the marriages, gay marriages?
We simply said Section 377, which makes even consensual sex amongst people of the same sex as a crime. That should go, and that has been allowed. So the issue of marriage adoption was not before the court, and I think that's a matter for the legislature. So at least 3-4% of the population who were potential criminals every day are now equal and free citizens.
Citing Shakespeare's A Rose is a Rose, the Supreme Court today linked the legalization of homosexuality to identity. The Chief Justice said identity is pivotal to one's being, and he went on to say identity is equivalent to divinity. In New Delhi with A. Vaidyanathan, this is Nimisha Jaiswal for NDTV.
So we are just going to, we have in studio a whole set of young people from the community and others as well. And in studio we have two of the petitioners joining us from IIT. We have Debo Shah and we have Romil. You're from IIT Guwahati, you're from IIT Delhi. And of course, as our viewers know, the IITians have been a major part of the 2013 petition, which had petitioners from various walks of life, from hoteliers to artists, dancers and the IITians who moved the court and said this is not just about Section 377, it's about human rights, it's about our fundamental rights, it's about free speech and the right to life, which is why the whole Constitution 5-judge bench was set up to hear the matter, and that's why we have the historic judgment today. And of course, the audience also has lots of questions. But before I go to them, I just wanted to ask you some of the things that, the petition really and the judgment today goes into the experiences of people. And I think the judges, and we see 4 judges make separate judgments in that, they really go into the experiences of young people and the petitioners. IIT, of course, obviously is a huge institution in the country. It's what is associated till now by academic excellence, and now it's also, would you say, or do all IITians agree that it's also one of the places which is stood up for gay rights?
I would say it's a mixed opinion,
right.
And because I haven't sort of, the people also ask me like what exactly the reaction from the administration, because while these entire proceedings were going on, we from my own experience, I haven't had any sort of personal negotiation with the administration yet. So, but after this post verdict, of course, as I was saying, I'm going to revive that particular, we are going to revive that particular group in LGBT group in the IIT Delhi, which has been dysfunctional for some time. So now I will, as soon as we start to negotiate with the administration, we are now going to see what exactly their reactions.
There is still a lot of negotiation with the administration.
Yeah, it's there, it's very much there. And
can you tell us in what form?
So I remember like when I was doing my masters in JNU, and I remember there's this queer meetings that used to happen, and the people from IIT used to join there, and they used to say, there's really tough time to really convince, even to organize a workshop, even to organize, to call some, queer celebrity or a queer activist in the campus and to talk about queer issues. So, but still, I think the Delhi High Court's verdict put them in a platform that they still have a negotiation with the administration, that in terms of at least they have a chance to organize something. But I think after the Supreme Court's previous verdict, this entire overturn has actually made the group dysfunctional. And as I also want to add over here, that the institutes like IIT, where this major chunk of the population come from this particular age group of 18, 19. So that's the crucial age of human life, because it's a transition, and so for a queer person it's so difficult to really, to even they don't get a comfortable space to talk. I think that's more important, that you have a place where you just talk. That's something I think this verdict has also talked about, in terms of looking at the diverse experiences of queer persons in this country, and to create a space where they can safely talk. At least they wouldn't be judged, they wouldn't be intimidated.
You're right, because I think everyone talks about the fact that the IITs, that there's pressure there, that there are a lot of people who have suicidal thoughts. We've had so many instances of that, and of not being able to cope up with academic pressure. But that's not talked about what the LGBT community goes through. Did a lot of the petitioners, Menaka Guruswamy was here earlier, a lot of the petitioners, like we had Ritu Dalmia and others earlier, did you all form friendships because of this common fight together?
So the easiest way to get people together is to, just put a common enemy in front of them.
Who's the common enemy? 377.
Exactly. So that's what exactly happened in here. Before that, I don't think there was much interaction between all these parties, but that definitely increased.
Raman, you're from Guwahati IIT.
Yeah.
Tell me, did any of you face opposition from your families when you wanted to give your name to this fight?
I personally did not.
Really?
So my story is quite different, I would say. So growing up, I did not expect my family, my relatives to be open about these things at all, because what I always heard is like negative comments, feedbacks about the whole LGBTQ community when I was in closet. But I saw them progress over the years, and that's what made me believe that things can change, and things can change for really good.
So as soon as you came out, they were fine?
Yeah, there were a minor setback, like for 15 minutes, but after that everything was okay. It was very much fine.
That's fascinating story, and we have our audience members as well who want to share their stories. Yeah, who wants to go first? Yeah, go ahead.
So first of all, my name is Utkarsh. I'm a media student, and this is the first time I'm attending a live show like this, so I'm very nervous.
Don't be nervous.
What?
We're all very excited. Don't be nervous. We're all very excited.
Also excited at the same time. So it happened to be like, a show about one of the dearest things to my heart. That is like homosexuality and people who belong to LGBT community. So I would like to comment on RSS. I came up with a story, but then I saw that tweet of RSS.
You wanted to talk about RSS. Shall we just show our viewers what RSS said over there? Because it's important. We're looking at the various kind of reactions that have come in, and the fact that a lot of the political parties haven't really said much. But the RSS has said, however, it isn't something that is... It's an interesting reaction there. They've said, like the top court, we too don't think homosexuality is a crime, but such relationships against the order of nature, we do not support gay relationships. Indian society does not recognize gay relationships. So they welcome the top court, but they don't support gay relationships. So what would you want to say about that?
So I would just like to say that it's easy to, comment on people from the outside when you don't, I'm sure the people who are saying this, they have never talked to a person who's openly gay or who belong to LGBT community. They have never, tried to understand what they go through in life, and forget about, trying to connect to that person. Also,
so what do you want to tell them? They're listening to you today. What do you want to tell them?
So they said it's not a crime, but it's not natural either. So I just want to say, first of all, I don't understand why do we have RSS in our country? Yeah. So I sometimes get into fight with, people of RSS on Twitter, because just for the sake of entertainment, I don't really. So these are the same people who claim that, cow urine can cure your, eye infection or something like that. And their comments, like people who follow them, they have, seen what, and also the, so.
Well, you know, it's not just about the RSS. We haven't seen any overt reaction or like, you know, the flurry of reaction from political parties, which usually otherwise any landmark judgment should bring. We're not seeing that over here. The Congress party, of course, gave out a reaction welcoming this, saying that love is love, and they welcome that. But we haven't seen individual leaders. We of course have an interview that is going to play out with Shashi Tharoor in just a bit, but I just wanted to ask you about one of the observations that came from the court, and that's something which I want a lot of the audience also to, you know, to respond to. When they said, when the court said, if you can have that graphic up, when the court said biology isn't, it is biology but not mental illness. It is something that we hear them talking about quite a lot. The court went on to say, homosexuality is not a mental disorder. Treat LGBT without stigma. Devasha, why is it that they needed to say that? Why is it that they had to cite various psychologists and clinical magazines, and we see the court doing that quite a lot in their 500-page judgment? Isn't it obvious to us?
Yeah, so I can say from my personal experience, and I think people over here can also connect with it, I think there's hardly any queer person who hasn't heard a counseling. So like the first time you come out to your family, the first thing that you hear that you need a counseling. Or you need to go to a psychologist.
Really, that happens a lot.
Yeah, so even for me also, like when I came out to my dad, so he asked me to go counsel a doctor, a psychologist, or he asked me to, you can go for a homeopathic treatment. So I don't know, interestingly.
What does he say now, Devasha?
So for me, I would say with my mom and brother, it's a different sort of story, because I think probably if I'm here because of them. But with my dad, it's another, you know, I think I've also reached a point I really don't care about it. But
yeah.
He also still thinks that there should be, there's some blood test which can, you know, get my DNAs out. I don't know what sort of blood test he has invented himself. So probably he has himself. So, so that could, you know, that could identify the problems that I have in my cells or whatsoever, and he's going to treat with the advanced medical technology. So I think this particular statement is very important, and even when the proceedings were happening in the court, so there was this Indian Psychiatry Association which also came out with the fact that, you know, that this homosexuality is a sexual variance. It's a diverse form of sexual expressions. So I think that's very crucial, because I think hopefully, you know, for the future generations, whoever really comes out to their family wouldn't hear the first instance that you need a medical treatment.
Yes.
So I think probably from rescuing that kind of statement, I think the court has clearly made that, you know, it's not a mental disorder.
And obviously it's to lots of people. I didn't know that, but obviously from what you're saying, it seems that the court really had it spot on when it addressed this issue about saying it's about biology, it's not mental illness. Well, just not all politicians. We've been talking about politicians and how they've been very happy letting the court decide. They didn't want to legislate on this matter. But there are a few politicians, as I said, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley was one of the first people as well who came out and backed the action against 377. And the other one is, of course, Congress MP Shashi Tharoor, who tried to bring in this private members bill. He made 2 attempts at it, and he joins us now. Mr. Tharoor, thank you very much for speaking to NDTV. And as we hear the 377 judgment, as we read it, it really reminds us of what happened with your private members bill.
Well, I welcome the decision, Sunetra, and I'm particularly gratified that the Supreme Court has ruled on the basis of the exact same arguments that I tried to make in Parliament, namely that 377 issue is not so much about sex as it is about freedom, about the constitutionally guaranteed freedoms to all our citizens for equality, for dignity, for privacy. I was already quite hopeful because of last year's right to privacy judgment, which was a landmark judgment, and I think this builds rightly upon that as well. It says the government has no place in our bedrooms, that essentially people's private consensual behavior as adults is their business and not that of the government. I think this is a very, very important development. In many ways it comes rather late. It's been about 50 years since such rulings were made in the Western democracies, but better late than never. And I would say that it's very good that finally the Supreme Court has done what Parliament shamefully was unable to do when I tried to introduce my private members' bills, and the BJP vociferously shouted them down and didn't even allow them to be introduced. So we've made a right step forward, I think, for freedom in our country.
Well, even hours after the judgment came, Mr. Tharoor, we didn't hear many politicians reacting to it. Why is that?
Well, unfortunately, you see, those who have been opposed in a bigoted way to the decriminalization of Section 377 have cloaked their positions in family norms in India, in religious morality and so on, which, to be very honest, are actually ill-founded in the cultural and historical context of our country. India is a country where there has always been space for alternative expressions of sexuality, where the LGBT community finds its own figureheads showing up in the ancient scriptures, epics, texts, and temple carvings. Why it is that a new morality introduced particularly in the British Victorian Code of the mid-19th century has so completely taken a hold of our people that they've become hesitant to accept that ours was historically a culture of much greater freedom than the British reduced it to in the colonial era. It astonishes me, but it's true. Political courage has not been very much evident on this issue. I must admit that when I tried to raise the bill, I had the backing of my then party president, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, who supported it unreservedly. But many of my own party colleagues did not find it possible to attend to support me at that time. So it's very clear that for many, they feel that this is not their problem, it's not their issue, they don't want to be identified with it. And certainly when someone like me stood up to raise it, the kind of malicious hoots and cackles and sniggers and negative comments I got from the other side could make it very clear why no one was willing to stick their neck out. But fortunately, I had a very, very clear view on the matter. I believed it was one of a principle that related to constitutional freedoms, that related to the rights that every citizen of India ought to be able to enjoy, and it's from that perspective that I approached it. But for many of our politicians, they see it in a different light, and I'm sorry that, if you, as you tell me, very few others have been willing to come forward and hail the Supreme Court verdict. I think that's a great pity.
Well, you know, one of the people who was there when you were trying to push through the private members bill, Nishikant Dubey, he told NDTV that it was sub judice matter at that time. Do you think in that sense there were many politicians who were really happy to let the court take the, take the initiative for this, that they wanted to stay back, not do anything, and let the court be the one who takes the initiative in gay rights?
That is not what Mr. Dubey said in the Parliament debate. On the contrary, it wasn't at that point yet sub judice, and that the Supreme Court had not yet admitted either the curative review petition, which they did subsequently, nor had the Supreme Court begun hearings on this case, which it ruled on today. I introduced my bill first in December of 2015. This gentleman, who is now essentially lying to the media, opposed it on the grounds of what he claimed was the traditional family values of Indians. When I reintroduced the bill, it was in February of 2016. The same thing happened. It was only in March that the case became sub judice again, when the Supreme Court admitted the curative review petition. So my private member bills were introduced when there was no judicial process, where in fact the last word of the judiciary had been in December 2013, when the Supreme Court said that they would actually affirm the constitutionality of Section 377, and that it was up to the legislature to deal with this matter, not the judiciary, which is why I introduced the bill. It's only subsequently, after the failure of both my bills, thanks and no part to this gentleman who is now misrepresenting his position, it is only after that that the Supreme Court once again took up the matter. When I failed the second time, I publicly said, and I said this to the activist groups like the NAS Foundation and others that had approached me, I said that now it is very clear that as long as the BJP has a majority in this assembly, in this Lok Sabha, this will not find a legislative solution. It needs to go back to the judiciary. And it was on the basis of my setbacks that they went back to the Supreme Court. And I'm very pleased they did so, because I was right. You can't keep on trying the legislative route and losing, because as Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And I decided to keep myself sane by stopping those attempts. I said, let's leave it to the courts. And I'm very, very glad the courts have done what they have done. I think it's a very important step forward for Indian democracy and for the constitutional freedoms that all Indians should be able to take for granted, irrespective of their sexual orientation.
And as the flag bearer of gay rights, Mr. Tharoor, I have to ask you this before we let you go. Will gay marriage be your next private member's bill?
Well, look, let's all digest this good news and see, the fact is that the Supreme Court has been a very good voice for interpreting the existing constitutional freedoms in the light of evolving societal norms. So their decision in actually interpreting women's rights, for example, in a succession of court judgments, has given us a much more greater amplitude of rights for women in our society than earlier laws had. Similarly, it seems to me this could be the first of many other judgments that progressively expand freedoms for the LGBT community, but we also have to see how much society is willing to take. It was revealing that the government, when their final submission in this case, said that they would not take a position on the merits of the constitutionality of 377 and criminalization, and that they would leave it to the wisdom of the judges. But they added that the judges should not contemplate any additional steps because the government may have a different view. I think that's a clear warning that if the issue, for example, of gay marriage comes up, that the government may not be as willing to entertain such an issue, and they may actively oppose it. So I think it will be in the interests of all concerned to take things one step at a time, see how much society can absorb and move on. And I think for one thing, since the LGBT community now can truly walk the streets with their heads held high without feeling in any way the judgment of society, the state, or the police upon them, let them enjoy that experience of normality and freedom in our society, and then let's aspire to the next step. I do think that inevitably we will also find ourselves going the way of most other democracies. We were out of step with the majority of democracies so far till today in the criminalization of private sexual behavior. That should now change, and with that other changes could well follow.
Well, Shashi Tharoor, thanks very much for speaking to NDTV and standing up for equality and everyone's rights. Well, what did you think of that? Do you think that they should immediately push for gay marriage? Do you see, Romil, do you see in this judgment that's come up the seeds of that?
No. Rome was not built in a day, and the effect of today's judgment will not be seen in near future. So we have
to... It won't be. Okay, so that's a really realistic note.
Yeah.
Impact won't be seen immediately.
You cannot expect to see the impact just the next day. It takes time for people to adapt. It's a whole mentality. We have been here.
They're all nodding there in the audience, agreeing with you.
Yeah. So we have gone through colonization for almost 200 years, and after that it has been like around 70 years. So all of this time we have sort of synthesized one mentality, and it is not easy to let it go, and it is not easy to question what is our inherent bias. So it takes time, it takes a lot of going backwards and front, but yeah, I'm hopeful that we'll get there, but I don't see it any sooner.
Okay, so I just wanted to get in one reaction as well. Lots of people want to share their stories. Yeah, go ahead.
Firstly, I would like to thank all the petitioners who have fought a long battle for us, like for the upcoming generation of LGBTIQA. Like now we don't have to lose the people from our community, like people committing suicide. Like I have a very bad experience last year. One of my friends committed suicide due to like he came out to his family. That was a very bad experience, which I felt. Now we don't need to lose people.
I am very sorry that you have gone through that. So yeah, that also shows us where we are lacking and what we should be building our base as before we actually reach out for another equality or anything else.
Yeah.
We should have our base proper ready. We should have a support system so that nobody has to go through that. Who wants to go through that? No one, right? So yeah, we should do that.
You wanted to say something, yeah.
Hello everyone, myself Shazia. One thing before putting my question, I want to say that till today I never met an LGBT community person earlier. So I only want to say thing that you guys are amazing and auspicious part of our society.
You've never met a gay person? You've never met before this? Okay.
I never
the whole studio
communicated.
Today. Yeah, okay.
So my question is that as there are many things in the favor of LGBT community as Article 14, 15 and 21, but only on the ground of morality and unnatural things, they have been discriminated for a long time. So I want to ask that what is the future of LG community after this verdict in India? What do you see their future?
It's a huge question. I would say it's just a baby step. There are lots of issues. To be very frank, even I haven't gone through the entire verdict because it's going to take time to really, to go through the language also, because that's very important, because whatever things are going to come up after this had to have sources in this particular verdict. So I haven't really got a chance to really go through it in detail. But holistically, if I say, there are lots of things that need to be addressed. For instance, the issue of violence, because that's something that, as he was also pointing out, and this violence at the most intimate spaces. So like even I think this section 377 ruling out with section 377 also had to do with the fact that we have started to acknowledge that the intimate spaces could be violent as well, and I think even that also links with the whatever discussions that are happening around the marital rape also. So I think that's something that which bothers me a lot. And also there's issues of civil liberties. For instance, for instance, the trans persons who often had to leave their families, and after that they don't have the claims to their to their ancestral properties. So even there are also instances when the persons come out to be as queer, they have been denied to their property rights. So these are some fundamental issues that would be addressed eventually. And as also Romel was pointing out, the gay marriage is much later kind of idea. But of course, let's the society first digest this. It's going to take time to really negotiate with all these things. And I think that the entire apathy of these politicians actually show that what exactly happens with the larger society as well. Also, like it's like you completely remain silent, and it's such a historical verdict, and none of the politicians have the guts to say anything, and they claim that they're representative of this larger part of the society.
Okay, I just want to play out now when we talk about society. A lot of it is also one of the things which reminds us of the journey that we've all taken is if you remember the movie Fire, which came out, and even screening of a gay relationship, and in that Fire, of course, Deepa Mehta's film showed lesbian love, and even the theaters were burned down by protesters because of the threat, just because of the suggestion of that in a film. Well, Nandita Das, who was in that film, is now playing Manto, and she spoke to my colleague Rohit Khilnani about what this verdict means to her. Remember, she faced a lot of protests during Fire.
It's a big day in Indian democracy. Nandita, first reactions on this big day on the verdict of section 377.
Thrilled, absolutely delighted. I think at the time it was long overdue. My real engagement with the issue started with Fire, which was my first film 22 years ago. And I think somewhere I want to believe that it played its little part in the discourse, in making this a public discourse. And, you know, I think the verdict, I'm going to read out again. I know you probably have read it, but when I read the LGBT community possesses rights like others, and majoritarian views and popular morality cannot dictate constitutional rights. I think Chief Justice saying that and saying that history owes an apology to LGBT communities. Decriminalization is but the first step. The Constitution envisages much more. And I think this is really amazing. I mean, it's rarely that the judiciary has spelt it out in such clear words. So बहुत खुश हूँ, and I've been part of this campaign and the movement, and you know, it's a big day for social justice and human rights.
नवाज भाई, बहुत लोगों ने इंडिया में इसके लिए सालों लड़ा है, आप उनको क्या कहना चाहेंगे? एक बड़ा कंग्रेचुलेशन सबसे पहले
बहुत बड़ी खुशी की बात है, और आपके फ्रीडम को मतलब एक सम्मान दे के मतलब उसको वो किया गया है, तो ये तो सेलिब्रेशन वाली बात है हम लोगों के लिए,
सभी के लिए. You know, of course there will be people who will say this was always our basic right, it has come very late.
That's true, but better late than never.
Better late than never is what Nandita Das is saying, and that's, I think, what many of the petitioners feel, what many in the community and others outside as well feel. Of course, we have the audience here with us. Many of them have been sharing their stories over the course of this program. There's so many people who want to talk as well. What did you want to say, sir?
I think we should rejoice. You know, this is a very big moment. And you talk about gay marriages taking a long time. Well, that depends on us, doesn't it? So if we are courageous enough, if we believe in ourselves, if we really believe that homosexuality is not a crime in our heart of hearts, all right? And our conscience is absolutely okay with the fact that homosexuality is a good thing, then gay marriages will happen just tomorrow, all right? So now this Supreme Court thing that has happened today is a firm foundation for all you young people, all right? And you have to stand firm on this foundation and tell the world that India is okay with gay. The only thing that you have to do is look within yourselves, okay? And you have to really mean it. You have to mean it when you say that decriminalization of homosexuality is the right thing. You have to mean it. The Supreme Court has said it. They mean it. And I'm so thankful to them, because I'm burning with confidence and courage. And now I can walk the streets with my head held high. But I want you to help me. I can't be the only one to be courageous. Okay, the power of one. Yes, it has meaning. Yes, it does. Because somebody said that, okay, why are the politicians quiet? They are quiet because we are letting them, we're not telling them how serious we are about homosexuality. Whenever I have spoken to people, to very homophobic people about my homosexuality, I've managed to perk their ears up, and they have listened. And in the end, they have always accepted.
You know, that's such a, those words are so inspiring. Romeo, I think that was also addressed to you, because you're the one saying that it's not going to happen so fast. So we see two different opinions over here. Romeo saying, okay, let's put the brakes on. It's going to go one day at a time, and then we hear this. Thank you for that.
Just go out there and say it's okay to be gay. Okay.
Just, you want to say something to him, Romeo?
No, I actually agree completely. I mean, it is. I mean, if you think about it, it's not really different from what I'm saying. So you have to, be, very ambitious about what you want to do, but also you have to have some realistic goals. Of course, I mean, you do not know, I mean, how to reach your result until you try and fail and try again, and you have to try multiple possibilities, multiple scenarios. So I don't think my answer and his answer is really different. It's the same.
And what did you want to say? Yeah.
So I don't disagree with either. I feel like it was said earlier, Rome wasn't built in a day. Until yesterday, we were a country where, when there's an alleged gang rape of a goat in Haryana, the people who are penalized are under the same law as two consensual adults who want to be with each other voluntarily.
Yeah.
You know, so the law has been passed, but there's so much left to work on as far as the mindset is concerned. So I feel like that's something that we need to work on step by step as a country, as a democracy. And that's all.
Yes, that's right. And I think with that, that's a perfect cue to take a break, actually. And I want to thank my guests, the petitioners, who are the ones that because of whom we've got this historic judgment from the court. Thank you very much for sharing your stories, sharing experiences with us. We'll keep tracking the story, getting you different aspects of it. So stay with us here on NDTV. Thanks again. After the historic judgment by Supreme Court about decriminalization of 377 and speaking up for gay rights, it's all been about the petitioners, the people who have struggled against 377, the people who have silently fought against discrimination. Here is their story.
Humanity, let's walk hand in hand, let's build strand by strand. That's all.
That's all, you know, walk hand in hand, bring strength to each other.
Yes, absolutely. Can't keep our emotions within us anymore. This is a historical moment.
You know, so many people who have always been hiding behind the scenes, they have not been able to have the courage to come out. This kind of judgment will tell them that it's okay to be who you are.
Yes, yes, it's done, we have won.
How can you begin to describe your emotions at this point?
My country and my nation, my Supreme Court has today said, we are no more criminals and we are proud to be as what we are.
I think everyone here is very jubilant, very happy. All of us are here out and loud and proud and happy.
Out and loud and proud and happy. What did you like to add?
It is our Independence Day today.
It makes you really happy, does it, this word? Actually, I'm very emotional now, and equality, liberty, it's the victory of everything. आज हमें मतलब लग रहा है जैसे एक चिड़िया को पिंजरे से किसी ने बाहर कर दिया है.
Yadav, you also very happy, are you? Yes, of course. It's a very emotional movement. और हम पढ़े थे कि equality क्या है, liberty क्या है, but today we can feel it. Today we are the equal citizen of this country, and we are very, very grateful to the judges. We are very grateful to everyone, every individual who has worked towards it.
What kind of a change do you think this will bring about?
Although we are celebrating today, although we are elated and full of joy today, it's in a sense sad to see that the constitutional recognition of rights, which was there since the constitution came into force, is only affirmed today by the Honorable Supreme Court. But we are thankful it's done at least today.
As a community, we can think of it as the start of a big movement. And Section 377 only talks about the sexual orientation. What about those of us who do not identify with our genders?
We really appreciate Supreme Court of India for that, you know, giving us the dignity.
Yes, der hai durust hai. Better late than never is what I will say.
অলি গলি ঘুরে ক্লান্ত তবু তোমায় পাচ্ছি না.
Such amazing stories of celebration and visuals coming in there of reactions of people who fought for so long. Well, what's interesting is also the journey of sectors like Bollywood, which have struggled with their portrayal of the gay community, and what are the things that has actually elicited a lot of criticism was the portrayal of the gay community in movies like Dostana. Well, the stars of Dostana, Kiran Kher and Abhishek Bachchan, have tweeted about it today. Kiran Kher, who is also a BJP MP, tweeted saying, "Maa ka ladla legal ho gaya. Congratulations to the LGBT community and the Honorable SC for this much-awaited judgment." Abhishek Bachchan, of course, retweeted that by saying, "Haha, this is legendary." It certainly is a legendary judgment. And I spoke about this issue that Bollywood has grappled with, the portrayal of that, with gay writer and the man behind the award-winning film that is Aligarh, Apurva Asrani.
Aligarh was a film that actually took us into a space that was dark, and that was a space that was, imprisoned, an imprisoned space. And for 70 years, I said this earlier today, and it's been playing on my mind. So for 71 years, while the rest of my country enjoyed freedom and was an independent country, the LGBTQ community has been still, imprisoned and has been in the shackles of, not found its independence yet. And it's been very sad that for so many years that, we've had to live like criminals. We've had to live like people who were second-class citizens, who have no right to love, no right to express their love, and no right to hold public office. And it was a travesty of justice what happened in 2013. And, after those 4 years when, it had been decriminalized by the Delhi High Court, to suddenly be deemed criminal again. And all those people, all of us who came out and danced on the streets and said, finally that my country has a conscience, to go back into our closets, that was a very, very difficult period. But that
Apurva, can you expand on that? What do you mean back into our closets? Can you explain to the rest of the world just what it meant, the 2013 Suresh Kaushal judgment, as has been repeated so many times today? Just how much of a setback, how did it affect your lifestyle?
I mean, people like myself are luckier than others. I work in the media, and my voice is heard. So if there is any harassment, if people are discriminating against me, I have a very active Twitter account with lots of followers, and I have a good body of work behind me and certain media attention. So, I can still get away, with the discrimination. But for lots of people who had declared themselves as gay, who have come out as LGBT, to now realize that they had outed themselves. They can be seen, they're out there on the streets, and now people can pick on them. And when I say pick on people, you have to understand what it means. It starts in very, very gentle ways, very simple ways, not gentle by any manner. Where people are making fun of gay people, and you have to keep your mouth shut when they're making all those jokes. At your office, a husband and wife, a man who's married and brings his wife and children to the office party or to a function is given certain respect. But the gay man cannot bring his partner. So discrimination is at a level which I don't think that anyone would be able to understand.
And we end with best-selling author Devdutt Patnaik, who really makes us think or rethink this notion that homosexuality is not a part of our culture. He tells us about how it is talked about in all our scriptures. Good night and enjoy this.
This is common knowledge for anybody who studies biology, zoology, anybody who studies psychology, anybody who studies anthropology and sociology, that this is part of human nature. It is about how a legal system accommodates it. We were following a law that is over 150, 200 years old, written by Macaulay, and the court has sort of struck it down. So it's a very simple thing. It was long overdue, but the processes take its own time, and it's finally happened. I mean, there's nothing surprising about it. If we believe in Satyameva Jayate, this was an eventuality. It was just that it should have happened much earlier. It's happened now.
The fact that, bodies like we saw various churches and other religious organizations. They were the ones who actually put in petitions and gave in affidavits against decriminalization in 2013 when the Suresh Kaushal judgment came. And the fact that even today, that groups like the RSS, what they're saying, I just read out that statement as well, where they say that we support the judgment in decriminalization, and yet they look at it as a problem. They don't accept gay relationships. Would you say, as someone who writes about rights and writes about people, writes about mythology, would you say that they are reflecting?
Well, everybody is entitled to their opinion. India is too diverse a country and there are diverse opinions, and there is no way that anybody can capture the views of people. People change their minds. There are many people in the world who believe celibacy is unnatural. In nature, animals are not naturally celibate, and humans consider celibacy to be a holy act. So, opinions are of various kinds. For many people, being celibate is unnatural. For some people, homosexuality is unnatural. But it is about the state. What does the state consider? The state gives us freedom to stay celibate. The state gives us freedom to love men of the same, love between the same genders, love between different genders. So a state, how does a state think? The state thinks that you have a right to be celibate if you wish to be. You have the right not to be celibate, so long as it's between consenting adults in privacy and you respect each other's view. There's no disrespect. There is no violation of anybody's privacy or personal body. I think the state is thinking in its own way and bringing an ecosystem where people are allowed to be different.
And one question for once and for all, I mean, we don't, it's well known, but for all of them, all of the people, Devdutt Patnaik, you are an authority, for people to say this isn't part of culture, what would you, can you send out a message to them now as the authoritative author?
Well, I will quote a line. Well, I'm not an authority. I am a scholar who researches. I read more books than most people. Most people who claim to be authorities usually don't read as much. And knowledge is infinite, so we never know everything. But I would like to quote a line from Tulsidasa's Ramcharitmanas, in which Lord Ram is telling Kakabhusandi the crow, he is telling Nar Napunsak Nari ya Jeev Charachar Koi Sarva Bhav Bhaje Kapat Taji Moe Param Priya Soi. So he is saying that all creatures who come to me with affections, whether it's male, female or queer, I love them all equally so long as they give up malice. So if you're heterosexual and full of maliciousness, I don't think you're welcome in the Lord's kingdom. At least the scripture is saying that. But if you are loving and accepting of people and don't have malice, even queer people are welcome. Plants, animals, humans of all genders are welcome in the Ram's world. And that's what I have read in the Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas. I'm sure there are people out there in India who seem to know more than these scriptures, but the scriptures have always been open about it. That in the Lord's kingdom, and Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that everything that happens in this world is part of me, he doesn't exclude the LGBTQ community. This exclusion is done by a man called Macaulay, who wrote the law. And it's really tragic that people who claim to be Indian are supporting Macaulay's law.